What if light wasn't just a physical phenomenon, but the most ancient metaphor for the divine? Before there were religions, before temples or sacred books, there was light. The sunrise piercing the darkness, the flame that danced in silence, the stars that mapped the invisible. For the ancients, light wasn't merely illumination, it was revelation. It was the language of the unseen, the proof that something existed beyond the veil of matter. And perhaps it still is. The phrase "God is light" is often quoted, yet rarely understood. For many, it evokes a comforting image: warmth, safety, divinity. But beneath its poetic simplicity hides a deeper truth, one whispered across mystical traditions, hidden in symbols encrypted in scripture and experienced in moments of inner stillness. What if light was never meant to be taken literally? What if it was a code, a symbol for consciousness, awareness, vibration, the very essence of existence itself? In this video, we'll journey into the esoteric meaning behind that ancient declaration: God is light. We'll explore how mystics, philosophers, and initiates across cultures understood light, not just as an element, but as the manifestation of the divine intelligence, the spiritual current that animates all of creation. You'll discover how light has always been the bridge between the visible and the invisible, how sacred texts encoded this truth through metaphor, and how modern science unknowingly echoes these mystical insights. But more than that, you'll learn how this ancient understanding can transform your spiritual practice, your perception of reality, and the way you experience the divine in your daily life. Because the true light we seek is not found in the sky. It's found in the awakening of your own awareness. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Across ancient civilizations, light was never just illumination. It was initiation. In the Egyptian temples of Heliopolis, light symbolized Ra, the solar deity whose rays did not just warm the earth, but carried divine intelligence. In the Vedas of India, light was Jyoti, the luminous presence that pervades all things, the hidden spark within every soul. In the Hebrew tradition, the Shekinah, the indwelling divine presence, was often described as radiance, as brilliance too overwhelming to behold. And in early Christian mysticism, the Apostle John wrote, "God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all." But what did these ancient minds actually mean? To understand this, we must first step outside of the modern literal mind. The ancients were not merely describing photons or solar phenomena. They were pointing to something far deeper, the subtle substance of spirit. Light to them was the first form, the very expression of divine will made manifest. It was the first emanation, the first sign that the unseen had stepped into the scene. The Neoplatonists spoke of the One, the ultimate source, emanating the universe in cascading layers of light, from the purest unity down into material form. Each step down the ladder of reality was a dimming of light, not in brightness but in spiritual density. In this view, to return to God was to return to the light, not by moving upward physically, but inward metaphysically. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, this idea is mirrored perfectly. The uppermost sephira, Keter, represents the divine crown, the limitless light, Ein Sof Or. From this infinite, ungraspable source, all creation flows like light through colored glass, fragmenting into forms and dualities, yet always carrying within it the original luminosity of the source. Mystics across traditions echoed the same core idea, that light is not just an outer phenomenon, it is the inner reality of everything that exists. In the Gnostic texts, the material world was seen as a shadow, and the divine spark within each soul was described as a seed of light, trapped in matter, waiting to awaken. Even in Sufi poetry we find lines like, "Your light is the light, by which I see." Light then is not simply a metaphor, it is a spiritual blueprint. It represents the flow of consciousness, the essence of awareness, the signal of presence. To say God is light is to declare that the divine is not separate from reality, but woven into its very fabric. perceivable not just by the eyes, but by the awakened soul. This ancient understanding invites us to look again, not outward but inward, not to worship the light of the sun, but to recognize the light of awareness that shines even when our eyes are closed. To grasp the esoteric meaning of God as light, we must begin not with theology but with consciousness itself. Light, in its highest symbolic form, represents awareness, the knowing of being. In every mystical tradition, the awakening of consciousness is described not as acquiring something new, but as illumination. Something is lit from within. Something ancient and eternal is remembered. This is no accident. Light is the perfect symbol for the divine, because it shares the same qualities mystics have always attributed to God. It is everywhere, yet intangible. It reveals, yet remains unseen. It cannot be held, yet without it nothing can be known. Just as physical light allows the eye to perceive form, spiritual light allows the soul to perceive truth. In Hermetic philosophy, this idea was encoded in the Emerald Tablet's axiom: as above, so below. The light we see with our eyes is merely a shadow of the higher light, the inner radiance that gives life to the mind, the heart, the spirit. And in that tradition, to know the light is to become enlightened, to remember your origin, your essence, your divinity. But what is this light exactly? Not photons, not electromagnetic waves. In esoteric science, light is a metaphor for the vibration of pure intelligence, what some might call logos, prana, or chai. It is the first movement from stillness, the divine signal that animates form. In the beginning, according to Genesis, let there be light. Light is not created in the universe. It is the spark that begins the universe. And here lies the deeper secret. When the mystics say God is light, they are also saying you are made of that same light. You are not separate from the source. You are a frequency within it. You are a ripple in the eternal sea of divine awareness. That is why in meditation, prayer, or moments of deep stillness, we do not go anywhere. We return to what has always been inside, the luminous core of being. The ancient Egyptians illustrated this truth in the form of the solar disk above the head, often seen in depictions of deities like Ra or Horus. This was not merely artistic, it was a direct reference to the radiant mind, the divine intelligence descending into human awareness. In Eastern traditions, the same idea is expressed through the third eye or the crown chakra, energy centers that awaken the perception of the inner light. Even modern science begins to echo these teachings. Quantum physics suggests that particles behave differently when observed, that consciousness affects reality. And at the core of every atom, at the source of all matter, lies vibration, energy, frequency, light. So what if God is light is not a poetic metaphor, but a scientific and spiritual truth, hidden in plain sight? The divine is not a distant figure in the sky. It is the luminescence within your awareness, the intelligence behind your thoughts, the stillness between your breaths. And once you recognize that this light is not something you chase, but something you are, everything changes. You stop searching and start remembering. If light is the essence of the divine, then the journey of the soul is not about reaching outward toward something above, but inward, toward what is already shining beneath the surface of all things. This is why mystics speak of illumination, not salvation. Illumination means unveiling what was always there, hidden beneath layers of illusion. But why did the ancients protect this idea so carefully? Why encode it in symbols, myths, and metaphors instead of declaring it directly? Because the concept of divine light is not meant to be explained, it is meant to be experienced. Language can only point. The real transformation occurs when one feels this light, not just with the mind, but with the full depth of being. This is why in many esoteric schools, light is associated with initiation. Not everyone was given access to the deeper teachings. To behold the light without preparation, without purification of mind and intention, was seen as dangerous, not because the light itself harms, but because it reveals everything, including the shadows. And not all are ready to face that level of truth. In Kabbalistic texts, it is said that the light of creation was too strong, too pure to enter the world all at once, so it had to be concealed, filtered, layered. This became the doctrine of the hidden light, a light reserved for the wise, the seekers, the pure-hearted, and yet, traces of it are left everywhere, for those with eyes to see. The same principle appears in Christian mysticism. Christ is called the light of the world, but he also teaches the kingdom of God is within you. The message is clear. The divine light is not out there. It is within. The veil is not in the sky, but in our perception. This is why spiritual practices across cultures emphasize silence, stillness, meditation, breath, because it is through the quieting of the mind that the light begins to appear, not as a flash, but as a presence, a clarity, a knowing. Even the symbolism of fire follows this path. Fire is not only light, it is transformation. It burns away the unnecessary. It clears space. In the same way, the inner light does not just illuminate, it purifies. It reveals what is false, what no longer serves, and leaves only what is real. The soul, seen in its raw essence, is light. It was always light. And when we say God is light, we are not describing something external. We are identifying the very core of being, the origin and destiny of consciousness itself. That is why this phrase echoes across traditions, across time, across languages. Because truth needs no culture. It speaks to the deepest part of us. Light is the beginning, the path, and the return. And in the stillness of inner vision, we remember, we do not worship the light. We come from it. If the light of the divine is not somewhere out there but within you, then how do you begin to perceive it? This is the heart of the esoteric path, not to believe in light, but to experience it directly. And this experience begins not with rituals or doctrines, but with presence. The more present you become, the more visible the light becomes, not to the eyes, but to the inner awareness that exists behind the eyes. Here's the paradox. Light is always here. The problem is not its absence, but our distraction. The mind, clouded by thought, worry, fear, and identification with the material, becomes like stained glass, beautiful, but unable to transmit the full clarity of divine radiance. To let the light pass through you, you must first become clear. One of the most accessible techniques to begin this process is conscious stillness. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and sit in silence. Not trying to reach anything, not trying to visualize, but simply becoming aware of the awareness itself. Focus not on form, but on the field in which form arises. In that spaciousness, you may begin to feel a subtle brightness, not seen, but known. Breath is another gateway. Every inhale carries energy. Every exhale creates space. By aligning the breath with intention, you begin to attune yourself to the inner rhythm of the divine. A simple breath-focused practice done daily can cleanse the energetic field, calm the nervous system, and reveal subtle layers of perception previously hidden. You may also work with light visualization, but not as fantasy. Instead, see it as a tuning mechanism. Visualize a sphere of radiant light at your heart or crown. Let it expand with each breath. Feel its warmth, its subtle vibration. Imagine that this light is not coming from elsewhere, but is being remembered from within you. You're not calling it, you're revealing it. To deepen this connection, expose yourself to sacred symbols of light. Whether it's the solar cross, the eye of providence, or the mandalas of Eastern traditions, these archetypes act like mirrors. They speak directly to your subconscious and help you realign with the pattern of divine order. Finally, observe the quality of your own presence throughout the day. Ask yourself, am I radiating or reflecting light right now? Not in appearance, but in frequency, in tone, in intention. Light is not just about brightness, it is about clarity, coherence, and compassion. The more aligned your thoughts, emotions, and actions become, the more you become a living vessel of divine light. And this is the secret the mystics guarded, that the light of God is not something you seek, it's something you remove the veil from. And when you do, everything begins to change. Not because the world became brighter, but because you did. Throughout the ages, sages and mystics have pointed toward a truth too vast for words and too intimate for dogma. They called it light, not because of its brightness, but because of its nature to reveal, transform, and awaken. Light is not an idea. It is a frequency, a presence, a knowing that burns quietly behind the veil of form. To say God is light is not to speak in metaphor. It is to recognize that everything you see, feel, and are arises from a single luminous source. A source that does not blind but clarifies, that does not judge but illuminates, that does not demand worship but invites remembrance. You are not separate from that source. You are a prism of that eternal brilliance, refracting the infinite into the finite, the invisible into the visible. Your journey is not to become worthy of the light, but to remember that you have always carried it. In every moment of stillness, in every breath of presence, in every act of compassion, that light expands. So as you move forward from this video, carry this knowing with you. You do not need to find the light. You are the light. And when you live from that truth, the divine no longer feels distant. It becomes the very ground beneath your feet and the pulse within your chest. Thank you for walking this path with us. If this truth stirred something within you, share it, reflect on it, return to it, and above all, keep seeking the light behind the light.